the pros and the cons of the new camera on the iPhone 11, and all the drama surrounding Johnny Ive's departure from Apple. Let's get right to the core of this week's Apple News and Rumors. It's time to face the music. Whether you're a fan of the Square or not, this is looking to be the final design for the 2019 iPhones. Evidence has been mounting ever since January when OnLeaks published this image of that massive 3-lens camera square on the back of the iPhone 11. 6 months later, we're still seeing the same design everywhere. The latest leaked CAD renders from SlashLeaks for the iPhone 11, 11R, and 11 Max. Note, they still have a Lightning port. According to Mac Rumors, these are the renders most commonly used by case makers to intercept the next generation of iPhones, and they seem to be pretty final. In fact, case makers have already started to bank on the designs. Everything Apple Pro got his hands on some of the first iPhone 11 cases coming from China, which seemed to fit perfectly with the 3D models he'd made based off the leaks. He also put them on the existing XS and XSR models to get a sense of just how massive that square is. There's still a 0.0001% chance that Apple is trolling us with all these leaks, but let's for a second assume that this is true. There is a silver lining. The camera bump will stick out less than in previous iPhone models, based on the dimensions of these leaks, and will lie almost flush with the back of the phone, especially when it's covered with a case. Well, that and the fact that you're going to be getting a much better camera with a new super wide-angle option, more powerful zoom, night shots, and new software features with iOS 13 that could make this phone camera the one to beat. Now, the bad news is they had to add some girth to the iPhone itself to make all this happen, so it will be thicker than previous models, as shown by Everything Apple Pro. That, and you now have a massive square on the back of your phone. And it may not just be an aesthetic issue. This also means there's more exposed surface area to break a fall. Now, I've done a lot of drop tests in my time, and recently it seems like the camera lenses have been taking a hit. It was one of the first things to crack on the iPhone XR test and the Galaxy S10 test, and they both have smaller cameras, although the XRs does stick out quite a bit more compared to the XS. This because phone makers tend to favor the more scratch-resistant sapphire crystal over Gorilla Glass for the lenses. And yes, scratch resistance is key to cameras, but that does mean it's more prone to breakage. Plus, the case doesn't cover the camera, so we'll have to wait and see if this turns out to be the iPhone 11's Achilles heel. And the other big iPhone news this week, Apple may ditch Face ID for an in-screen fingerprint scanner, but only for China. According to a report in the Global Times, cited in Mac Rumors, Apple is looking to launch a cheaper iPhone alternative. This to compete with other Chinese manufacturers who are offering phones at lower prices. An in-screen fingerprint scanner, turns out, is cheaper than all the components for the Face ID, therefore they could lower the price. What this doesn't rule out is the prospect of having both forms of biometric identification on the global version of the iPhone 11. Because that's another rumor we've been following. So, which would you rather? Face ID or in-screen Touch ID? Or both, I guess? Let me know in the comment section below or on Twitter. You guys know the drill. The other product we're expecting from Apple in September is an Apple Watch Series 5. Last week, I asked you guys to weigh in on the features you wanted to see in the next Apple Watch, and health features are pretty high on everyone's wish list. Rich Dollar says glucose monitoring would be a feature that would sell like hotcakes. Blood pressure monitoring also made your list, along with blood oxygen levels, which I had forgotten was actually a possibility, so thank you Sherman MR2 for reminding me. But sleep tracking was probably the most popular health feature among you guys, while better battery life was your #1 request. Chris Chan says, the sleep tracker and longer battery life, 2 things holding me back from buying this watch. And both these things go hand in hand, so I'm thinking if we get one, we're definitely gonna see the other. Now, if battery wasn't an issue, I'd like to request an always-on display too. Hey, not all wishes have to be realistic, right? And a lot of you guys still like the traditional square design over a circular one. Henry Bickle says, If the Apple Watch ain't broke, don't fix it. Change is good in terms of design, but it's inferior in terms of screen space versus a circular watch face. Although I personally like Russell Jennings' idea to have both options. Release a round one with the exact same specs and stuff as Series 4, so you can just have a choice of square or round, but it's the same Apple Watch really. Although as much as I'd like to see a circular watch face, I don't think this is likely, especially now that Johnny Ive is gone. Now that we've had about a week to process the news of Apple's chief designer leaving the company, we're still hearing new details about the terms of his departure. This week, the Wall Street Journal reported the design guru had been distancing himself from Apple for years because of conflicting opinions about the direction the company was heading. They say, quote, "His departure from the company cements the triumph of operations over design at Apple, a fundamental shift from a business driven by hardware wizardry to one focused on maintaining profit margins and leveraging Apple's past hardware successes to sell software and services." Yikes. Tim Cook apparently did not like the Journal's portrayal of the situation, calling it, quote, "absurd," shortly after the article went live in an email to NBC, published on Twitter by reporter Dylan Byers. The Apple CEO says, quote, "A lot of the reporting and certainly the conclusions just don't match with reality. It distorts relationships, decisions, and events to the point that we just don't recognize the company it claims to describe." Worth noting, sent from his iPhone. You know he took offense because Cook rarely responds personally to media reports. And in the meantime, the Wall Street Journal said it stands behind their story. Drama, drama, drama. So who do we believe here? That one's on you. I, for one, hope that this new move reinvigorates Ive and that he comes back to inject some of his wizardry into the Apple designs of the future. Cheers to you, Mr. Ive, or should I say, Sir Ive. That does it for this week's episode, and happy 4th to those of you watching in the US. For everyone else, we'll be back to normal next week on Thursday with more Apple Core. See you then.